49 bodies who'd all been decapitated, all had their hands and feet cut off, and all been dumped on a road. And they were taken to the morgue in Monterrey, and I arrived at the morgue. I was inside the morgue just smelling the smell of the dead bodies, this kind of weird smell you get from like decaying flesh, kind of like a sweet smell you get from when you're around those places where you can smell the bodies decaying. And I was inside the morgue, and I came out, and she was outside the morgue, and she was trying to see if her son might be among those people, among those bodies.
Is it possible that we're looking at a country that might be completely run and overrun by criminal organizations and drug sellers?
Some parts of it are already.
Yeah.
So what I think is going to happen is you'll see escalations. A clear sign or a clear group that is like a sign of things to come is the new generation cartel. The new generation cartel is a cartel that was it used to be called Los Matacetas. It was basically an armed enforcing group that Sinaloa cartel made to go after their main rivals, the Zetas, which were originally members of Mexican special forces that said, you know what, we're going to be cartel guys now, and cartel enforcers now. So they whole sordid history. It was a militarized group that was formed to go after them, right? And their whole kind of play was that we're going to be against extortion, against abducting people, against affecting the community. We're going to enforce the law in our communities, but we're also going to move drugs through here, right? But that's, that's kind of their thing. So you see this group start kind of growing in the region. And right now it's pretty big. It's rivaling the Sinaloa cartel as far as power and reach. But the way they do their things is militarized.
If we defunded the police, we'd be Mexico quicker than we thought.
Yeah, right.
Because the cartels will just drive over the border.
Yeah. That's real.
Yeah.
What do you think about this idea of using special forces guys to fight the cartels?
First and foremost, like if you were like, yo, we're going to wipe out a cartel tonight, I'd have been like, I'll load my frags extra careful. Like, let's go, right? But the reality is like, I know all my buddies are like, yeah, we'll fuck them up in a night. We'll fucking, fucking let's back up a fucking second here. The cartels have fucking men. They own the ground. They have fucking technicals. They have machine guns. They have fucking everything an army has, right? And they've had decades to train waiting for this. Number two. And number three, our government's fucking compromised. So if you think they ain't gonna know you're coming, you know what I mean? I think you're fucking high.
Jesus Christ, that's a terrifying thought. The government's so compromised, the cartel's gonna get the word out before.
Oh, gold guns are, that's how you know.
Yeah, there's some amazing websites that document all the different stuff that the cartel has, but they love gold guns.
Yeah, that's El Chapo got like a very special gold gun when he was named one of the top earners in the Forbes list. I think he got his number on the gun and everything. The second to last time he got caught, because he got caught a lot of times and escaped. Somebody in the military that got him took it, and it ended up in the museum. I think it's in a museum somewhere in Mexico City. Where a lot of these gold guns, that's a war trophy for those guys, right?
So there's like a gold gun section of the museum?
Yes, there is. Mexico City.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. Gold AK-47s,
Now, if everything is so corrupt down there, how does a guy like El Chapo keep getting popped? I mean, because when I saw his escape,
yeah,
I was like, this is hilarious. The fact this guy goes to the toilet and then he opens a door and whoop, he's in a tunnel and on an electric scooter and goes a mile, pops up on the other side, and they had everything set up for him with electricity. Like,
I think the thing that people kind of don't understand about the corruption is it's not just corruption because people are greedy. It's also fear-based corruption. So if you don't do what I say, we're going to kill everybody in your family, even your dog. That type of thing.
When did you start getting into narco journalism?
So, like, I arrived, say, with a romantic idea about what I might cover in Mexico or Latin America. And right away I realized all that idea of guerrillas and military dictatorships that are gone. That was the last century. Che Guevara, all that stuff had gone. But right away when I arrived, when I very first arrived, back in the UK, I grew up around a lot of drugs in the UK. So going back to the 80s, I grew up with a lot of people taking drugs. I had a few friends who died from heroin overdoses back then. 4 people I knew died of heroin overdoses. But anyway, going back, so I've been around a lot of drugs before. So when I arrived in Mexico, actually, one of the first arriving in Mexico, I ended up hanging around with some people, and they were smoking a lot of crack in Mexico. It's some of the first people I met.
Wow.
I went down to the beach, like backpacking down to the beach, and these people were smoking crack, and I was like, this is kind of strange. I didn't know these people smoking crack down here. So when I got a job at the local newspaper in English, and I just started looking at the crime thing, one of the first stories I did was on the issue of crack being sold locally and how that linked to cartels. And then very soon, just very, very quickly, I just fell in right away. Like I said, a lot of these things happen by accident. I just fell into covering the crime beat. And this is going back to 2001. So 2001, that was the same year that Chapo Guzman escaped from prison. Then I was calling a lot then to a great journalist from Tijuana, Jesus Blanconelas, a real legend from Tijuana, who survived the shooting by cartels. And phoning him up all the time, just getting him to give me information, give me tips, and that was how it really started. Another big story I did back in those days was the court martial of some generals for drug trafficking. And that was really where it began.
America should go back to making its own fucking cell phones and its own. We shouldn't have our fucking comms made overseas at all in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion.
No, I've been saying that forever. We should have our own cell phones.
Fuck.
And the fact that we're buying so much shit from China.
Fuck.
Especially after they banned Huawei because they know that Huawei stuff was compromised and they're having third-party input and be able to spy on people.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy.
Well, this is why we got to go back to making America like it used to be. We made our own shit. We use our own shit. We wouldn't have to worry about none of this.
Yeah, it's a very strange thing what's happening in this country where China's allowed to buy land that's near military bases. They supply cell phone towers. They put all these different. They sell us all this different shit, and we don't really know. I mean, I don't know how many experts are investigating these fucking cell phone towers.
Fucking zero,
Yeah,
I bet. Fucking
I bet.
zero.
Mike Baker was on here and he was telling me about how around military bases, like China has installed their equipment in all these military bases. Like at Formula One, where we were, my buddy owns the track, and they found these Chinese boxes that they had attached to the Wi-Fi. So they were just scooping up everybody's data. They called in Homeland Security to have them remove it and investigate it.
Fucking racetrack.
A racetrack, but they knew everybody was going to be using this public Wi-Fi. Probably no VPNs, probably no security, and these people are getting all their shit siphoned up.
Hearts and minds. They go into the communities. They're community policing in the area. They originally said, we're aware the government wants to fight drugs here in the region. We agree with their fight, but we are also going to fight against these guys that are affecting the community as well. And they have like groups of people. They have training camps, militaristic training camps, where they recruit people. They take them there, and they're being trained in guerrilla warfare and shooting. And apparently, there's some SF guys from the U.S. that advise them. So that's the next thing. The escalation of a simple ragtag group of cartel guys enforcing a region to an actual cohesive paramilitary group. Now trying to vie for control, not just of the drug routes, but also of the populace and the confidence that the populace has in them. So it could turn political at some point, right?
It just seems like it's the genie's out of the bottle.
It is. It is. It is in a lot of ways. And going after it just as a drug enforcement issue is not. It's
so much bigger than that.
Yeah, it's cultural. It's economic. Some of these kids. I posted up some of these cartel soldier kids at 12 years old.
Gold-plated guns.
Gold-plated guns. They don't have options in their lives.
Right.
It's that or nothing.
Right.
So,
it's either awesome life or
short awesome
extreme
life.
Poverty.
Short awesome life.
Yeah.
Or
Short awesome life or extreme poverty.
So that's one component to it. Another component is systemic corruption as a society from who knows when. It's always been a thing in Mexico. People that grew up down there, you get stopped at a red light and you're like, can I pay the fine here? You know, people that are from down there will be aware of this. Yeah, show the paperwork, you slide that thing in there, you know. That's part of the culture. That's affecting a lot of things as well.
Corruption must be unbelievably rampant.
So, I mean, corruption even isn't a strong enough word for it. Sometimes I call it state capture. I mean, so this is the real beginning, and this has been a whole crazy 18 years of covering this stuff. I mean, this was just the very beginning back then. I've seen a whole lot of very crazy stuff in that time. But like, just to get a sense of how bad the corruption is, or what it really means on the ground level there. Like, there's policemen. Like, you interview policemen, you get to know the policemen in a certain town, certain city. And it's hard to know, you know, or military guys or politicians, and you want to believe these are good people. You want to believe there's good policemen out there who really want to stop crime. So there was one policeman. His nickname was Tyson, like Mike Tyson. His nickname was Tyson because he was a well-built bloke, well-built guy, and he was friendly with the press. A guy from Michoacan, friendly with the press, and then it came out that he was actually a drug cartel member, a ranking member in the drug cartel, and he actually confessed. They used to have a thing where the police, the federal police, when they got him to confess on camera, and he confessed. Not only was he turning a blind eye, not only was he carrying out murders, he was training the young kids how to decapitate people, how to cut people up, and he was explaining in graphic detail how he'd like, you know, how they managed to cut limbs off, how he gets young people to train them to cut limbs off, to get them to lose their fear. So that's the level of corruption. That could be a policeman you're dealing with, and that's really who they are.
Being next to the largest drug market on the planet, you know, and having money, firearms, rounds going down, and fentanyl that is being fabricated in Mexico now, and some of the Chinese fentanyl making its way through into the U.S., kind of filling the voids that some of the drug market has right now. So they're making fake fentanyl-laced pills. They're being put into the U.S. and fentanyl-laced heroin, right? So that's where they're going towards now. That's why you see this epidemic up here. And a lot of things traditionally kind of focused on pot before it was legalized in a lot of regions up here now is heroin and fentanyl.
So it's actually kind of accelerated the production of the more harmful and dangerous drugs.
In some ways, yes. I mean, they had to find another. You know, it went pot, meth, and now fentanyl-laced heroin or fentanyl-laced pills.
See, and the problem with the idea of legalization is that if you try to be the person who says, hey, folks, we need to legalize drugs here in America because we've got this problem with the cartels, politically that's suicide.
Yeah.
No one, I mean, even though it's probably right.
It is. I think it is very right.
It's one of those things that's so counterintuitive that most people are going to go, you're crazy. You're going to make my kids hooked on drugs.
Well, I'll say this. I fought in the drug war. I'm literally a drug war veteran.
Yes.
And if I had a white flag, I would hand it over to you. You know, it's like it's a useless fight. I got to destroy pot fields. Realistically, thinking about all the effort and all the blood, I'm like, it's just pot.
If you think you're an American company, you're going to go over to China and operate with autonomy, you're out of your fucking mind.
Yeah.
You can't buy shit.
Yeah, they'll never let an American.
Never.
No, they don't want. Chinese would never buy communication devices from America.
No, and they certainly would never let America buy farmland right next to their military bases. They'd be like, fuck you.
Yeah.
We're like, sure, we'll sell it to you. Are you going to pay more?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. We'll take your money.
Fucking.
It's weird. It's weird how goofy we are.
I know. And then, like, well, I think it's this, Joe. I think people don't realize how fucking dangerous the rest of the world is and how, like, people are, like, plotting against us. And it's fucking real out there. The world is a crazy place. I say this, like, you don't know how fucking safe you got it here and how fucking great we got it here. You know what I mean? Like, people don't know that because they don't never leave here, so they're stuck in their own fucking bad attitude of, like, their own grind or whatever the fuck they do. And, like, look, I'm telling you, the world is fucking evil. People will fucking rape you, kill you. No one gives a fuck. Like, protect yourself all the time.
Well,
man.
you've been to parts of the world where you've seen this firsthand, and I think it's one of those things where if you don't see it, you don't believe it.
Yeah.
all of the staff at the jail got put in prison, and
Really? So they were all part of it.
there's rumors that they were.
Seems like somebody had to hear all that digging.
Of course,
I mean, it's only a mile away. They dug the tunnel.
It was pretty deep.
Yeah.
Some things that should have been patrolled weren't patrolled. It was a pretty good, well-made tunnel for what it was.
Really well made.
So a lot of the people that El Chapo actually used for these tunnel operations, because the same people that he used for the tunnels in the border region, all the active tunnels that are somewhere along the border, all of those guys were pulled in from silver mining companies that used to operate all over Mexico. That kind of went into the toilet, so they were looking for jobs, and
Wow. Get El Chapo out. It's a good job.
that's or drug tunnels.
When you saw all that shit go down with Sean Penn and Sean Penn visiting El Chapo and Sean Penn writing an article for Rolling Stone, were you like, what in the fuck is going on here?
Yes. For some reason that might not be, mainly was why are they giving him this celebrity status?
Yeah.
There's a lot of glorification and a lot of people venerating some of these people down there, and they do a lot of harm, so that he's basically giving a voice to somebody. It would be the equivalent of somebody up here giving a voice to somebody that was responsible for a lot of damage done to the U.S. It's
Why do you think they did that? Like, what was the romance? It was romantic, right? There was something about it. It's like, here's Sean Penn, one of our biggest movie stars, with one of the biggest drug dealers ever.
I mean, he is El Chapo down, because I've been to Sinaloa, and I've actually done classes there, which was pretty surreal. He's a folk hero. He's a Robin Hood, basically, to these people. And when the surreal moment that I had down there, I was driving along this bad bumpy ride highway, and all of a sudden it turned into a nice kind of highway. And the guys that I was with told me, "Oh yeah, this is the cartel made this highway."
Did you have any hesitancy in getting involved in narco journalism knowing this? I mean, I would imagine that's one of the most dangerous avenues to pursue in journalism.
So this was little by little I got involved in covering this. So going back to 2000, this hadn't happened. This war hadn't happened. It was still like a crime issue at that moment. So I began to cover these things, and then around 2004 I got a job for the Houston Chronicle out of Houston, Texas. I was a stringer covering Mexico for them. And I flew up to Nuevo Laredo, and there was a turf war beginning there, which is really the beginning of the drug war, which has torn Mexico apart. Began on the border with Texas in this city called Nuevo Laredo, over the bridge from Laredo, Texas, back in 2004. So there was a lot of interest from the Texas newspapers, what was going on. There's a whole bunch of bodies piling up there. But again, this going back to these days, and this is kind of innocent looking at myself then, and innocent looking at what Mexico was like then. They would simply say, go to the place. I'd drive up to Monterrey, rent a car, and just drive the car to Nuevo Laredo just by myself. And now people just don't do that. There's just too much crazy stuff going on. But back then it was still like, oh, you can just do that. So there was
When you say crazy stuff, like what kind of crazy stuff?
I mean, now you can get stopped by an armed group driving on those roads. You could just drive along, and there could be a group of guys with guns could stop a car, get someone out, take you away. I mean, there's a whole people are a lot more careful about where you now when you move around the roads, you got to be very careful how you move and how you plan this stuff. You don't just wander by yourself, drive around these places.
Fentanyl, heroin, maybe different drugs.
Fentanyl in particular.
But a lot of that fentanyl is coming from China. Mm-hmm. It's not a Mexican thing.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of the people that are making or producing fentanyl in places like Mexico are from China, setting up laboratories in Mexico. So it's a Chinese, Mexican, U.S. problem as well.
God damn. What can be done? Other than the legalization, what can be done? I mean, how does... unless the United States literally goes to war with the Mexican cartels, and you made a face talking about that.
I mean, I'd say designation is one. I think designation it's going to happen.
a terrorist designation.
It's going to happen. I mean, again, we just saw the massacre of Mexican. They were dual citizenship, 9 people, kids, women. It's not uncommon for that to happen to Mexican nationals. It's pretty uncommon for that to happen to American nationals down there. And that woke up a bunch of people, you know? Mm-hmm. And now another recent murder of another American national, you know, kid with his parents down there. You know, people will say, but just don't go down to Mexico. But some of these people, you know, live down there, have family down there, have communities down there. And it's just ultra violent. Schools, careers, lawyers, doctors, all their careers paid for.
By the cartel.
Immigration processes of people that want to come over here, sponsorships and all that type of stuff on both sides, right? So the span of influence, that's how he kind of got to where he was. You know, he was always helping people, and he was investing in people, and these investments would pay later on. You know,
in a lot of ways, it sounds like he benefited them. He benefited some aspects of the community.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why the military couldn't get him, people could say corruption, but because he had a human shield around him. You know, all these towns owed, you know, schools, hospitals. Instead of Christmas down there, they celebrate the Day of the Kings, you know. So you would get presents. Mother's Day, they would all get presents, that type of thing. So why would we want to help the military come in here and get El Chapo if he's doing this type of stuff? You know, that is the same all over Mexico with some of the cartels. You know, they hearts and minds type approach is what makes some of these groups, you know, long lived.
So back then when this was happening, and there was these bodies turning up, and I was trying to figure out why, and there was one guy interviewed who was the head of Chamber of Commerce, and I talked to him, you know, a very interesting guy. About a couple of weeks later, he became the chief of police for the city, and they asked him, they said, "Are you scared? You scared about being killed?" And he said, "No, I'm not scared. It's only the corrupt people who get killed." And he was shot dead 6 hours after he gave that statement. They shot him dead. And that was one of the real markers of something really strange is going on in Mexico. Something is like going to erupt in Mexico. And then from there, it kind of just escalated. And I started working for other media, Time Magazine, New York Times, different people. And after a while, I said, I can't do this. I can't just write news stories about this. I've got to write books about this because this stuff is big and it's complicated.
It must be immensely complicated for the people that live there. It seems like there's no escape. I mean, if you can't turn to the police are the cartel. There's the cartel, the police, all of the politicians, most likely, if they're alive, have to be compromised.
This problem is not just a Mexican problem, it's a U.S. Mexican problem. And, it'll get to a point where it's going to be, I think in my lifetime there's going to be some sort of armed intervention in Mexico at some point.
Really? So you anticipate almost like a civil war?
I think something's going to happen in Mexico that's going to destabilize it so much that the U.S. won't have another option but to put boots on the ground, probably. I think that's where we're headed. The problem, and again, another of the problems is that the government is part of the problem. So you can go down there and negotiate with this government, but 6 years later, it's going to be another government.
You got to renegotiate with them.
Yeah, and also
with new palm grease.
Yeah, and then you put all your faith in the military, and the military gets compromised. You put all the faith in the Mexican Marines, and then they get compromised. And now who do you have, right? So it's systemic.
How much of an effort is there to eradicate the cartels? Because if you can get a guy like El Chapo, who at least in terms of like popularity is at the top, is he at the top of the list?
As far as popularity?
But he's at the top of the list as far as popularity. But as far as like the actual drug dealers, is he at the top of the list, or are there more clever folks that hide underground?
Yeah, there's rumors of people above him that are still out there somewhere.
Yeah, that's what everybody that's the great conspiracy. Is that like El Chapo is basically the bank manager?
There's he has a compadre. A compadre is somebody that if you're the godfather of my kid, you're my compadre, right? So he has a compadre out there, El Mayo Zambada, and he is still out there, right? And the extent of how he works and where he works is unknown.
Some of the things that stay with me. For a while it was quite romantic covering this. It was like, wow, I'm going to these places where Chapo Guzman is from. I go up to the village and meet his mother and meet his family. I'm writing about these crazy people. But then you start seeing the human pain in all of this. One of many stories that stick with me was a mother in Monterrey, a school teacher. When you have armed guys moving around, they're also really affecting the civil population, attacking the civil population. And one mother, she was in her home with her 2 children in Monterrey, and it was like in the night, just chilling in their house, and then the door broke down, and about 15 guys in bulletproof jackets all came in, long arms, just taking stuff from the house, held the family, pinned them down. And they said to the mother, "Which of your children is the oldest?" And she was like, didn't know how to reply. Which of your children are the oldest? How do I reply to that? She just couldn't speak. And the eldest son, she had 2 sons, one 18, one 15. The 18-year-old was a philosophy student. And he said, I'm the oldest. I said, okay, you're coming with us. And took him away. The next day she got a phone call saying, okay, we got your son, give us this amount of money, we'll give him back. So she went round to relatives, just got the money. She wanted to get the money right away. She turned up with the money, gave some money, and then they just cut off the calls. She hadn't heard from him since.
Some people get sick with the fame, probably, and they want to go outside. And,
once that TV show Narcos came on,
yeah,
then I think there's a lot of people who did not realize how crazy the life of Pablo Escobar was.
Yeah,
and what really went down in Colombia.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Pablo Escobar was a single, he was a phenomenon in his time and age, but he was one man. Now imagine replicating that type of insanity over the span of Mexico, and it's about 8 or 9 guys, That was the 90s, early 2000s, because these guys were, Legion of Doom type thing, where they would be enemies, but they would have reunions and they would meet up and kind of agree on, certain
terms
things
and stuff.
Yeah,
just like in the Pablo Escobar show.
yeah.
So they really do that. They get together and have meetings, and sometimes they kill each other.
That's a reality. They do at times, or did at times, because things are currently after El Chapo. Things kind of shifted and changed.
What happened?
Well, main thing is a power vacuum, and with the power vacuum and legalization on this side of certain substances like marijuana, the pot fields are now poppy fields, and new things like them now dedicating themselves to heroin instead of the weed, which mysteriously there's still weed fields down there for some reason. You guys are way better at making it than anybody down there, but for some reason there's still some weed fields.
Well, I think it's a lot of it is access, especially in the states where it's prohibited.
Yeah,
it's just they're probably more willing to get it to the people.
That's probably it. Meth precursors being brought in from China to Mexico, or now being made in Mexico, like industrial level stuff.
Right.
On Thanksgiving Eve 1971, a man vanished from an airplane at 10,000 feet with $200,000 in ransom money, disappearing into legend. Using just a polite note about a bomb, he hijacked Northwest Flight 305, demanded cash and parachutes, then jumped into the stormy darkness over Washington state. Despite America's largest manhunt, Cooper was never found. Only a small portion of the money surfaced years later on a riverbank, deepening the mystery. Was he a skilled paratrooper who planned the perfect escape, an airline employee with inside knowledge? Or did his daring leap end in disaster? 50 years later, this question still captivates the FBI and amateur sleuths. Who was D.B. Cooper, and how did he pull off the perfect crime? Skyjack era. The 1960s and early 1970s marked a golden age for air travel, but also an unprecedented wave of airline hijackings. While today's passengers endure rigorous security checks, in 1971, you could stroll onto an airplane carrying virtually anything. There were no metal detectors, no ID requirements, and little passenger screening. This lax security environment created perfect conditions for what became known as skyjackings, sometimes occurring at the rate of one per week. Would you believe passengers could walk straight to the gate with no security screening whatsoever? Notes aviation historian James Burin. You could carry weapons, pay cash for tickets without showing ID, and board with minimal verification. Many hijackings during this period were politically motivated, with criminals demanding flights to Cuba or ransoms for political causes. Between 1968 and 1972, more than 130 American commercial aircraft were hijacked. The phenomenon became so common that some airlines began keeping Spanish-language maps and landing instructions for Havana in their cockpits, just in case. Law enforcement agencies were struggling to develop effective countermeasures, but commercial pressures worked against them. Airlines feared that security checks would inconvenience passengers and reduce profits. The Federal Aviation Administration was caught between ensuring public safety and maintaining the commercial viability of air travel. It was in this vulnerable environment that one mysterious man spotted a perfect opportunity. Unlike politically motivated hijackers, this individual seemed interested solely in personal gain. He studied airport procedures, aircraft specifications, and possibly even weather patterns to develop a plan unlike any that came before it. When Cooper boarded Flight 305 on November 24, 1971, he exploited every weakness in the system. No one questioned his ticket purchase under a likely false name. No one searched his briefcase for explosives. And no one had reason to believe that this quiet, well-dressed passenger would soon orchestrate one of the most audacious crimes in American history, one that would ultimately change aviation security forever. The moment a polite passenger hands a note to a flight attendant and transforms into America's most mysterious criminal. The perfect passenger, how Cooper hijacked Flight 305. As Northwest Orient Airlines, Flight 305 climbed into the cloudy Pacific Northwest sky on November 24, 1971. None of the 36 passengers or crew suspected anything unusual about the man in seat 18C. Described later as middle-aged, 5 feet 10 inches to 6 feet tall, with dark hair and brown eyes. He wore a business suit with a black tie and white shirt, indistinguishable from countless business travelers that day. Flight attendant Florence Schaffner barely noticed when the nondescript passenger handed her a note, assuming it contained someone's phone number. A common occurrence for attractive flight attendants in that era, she tucked it into her pocket without reading it. That's when the man leaned toward her and whispered something that made her blood run cold. "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." The handwritten message informed her that the man had a bomb in his briefcase. When she hesitantly sat beside him, as instructed, he opened the case just enough to reveal what appeared to be red cylinders, attached to wires. Whether it was a real explosive device or an elaborate hoax, the threat was clear. What would you do if suddenly faced with a seemingly calm man claiming to have a bomb? Asks former FBI agent Larry Carr, who later worked the case. The flight attendants had to assume the worst and react perfectly to keep everyone safe. Cooper's demands were methodical and precise. $200,000 in unmarked $20 bill, equivalent to over $1.3 million today. 4 parachutes, 2 primary and 2 reserve, and no police tricks. If his requirements were met in Seattle, he promised to release all passengers unharmed. Throughout these tense negotiations, Cooper remained unnervingly polite, even ordering a bourbon and soda and paying for it, including a tip. What's most remarkable is how Cooper maintained complete control without creating panic. Most passengers never realized their flight had been hijacked until they landed and were evacuated in Seattle. His calm demeanor and detailed demands suggested someone with careful planning and perhaps specialized knowledge. The question investigators immediately faced was whether Cooper was a professional criminal or just someone who'd reached his breaking point. Notes criminal psychologist Dr. Elizabeth Loftus. His methodical approach certainly suggested someone who'd thought this through thoroughly. The strange set of demands that would make this hijacking unlike any other, and the critical clues Cooper may have accidentally revealed about his background. The exchange, ransom, parachutes, and a peculiar plan. As Flight 305 touched down in Seattle around 5:45 p.m., Cooper's unusual demands were already being assembled. FBI agents worked frantically to gather $200,000 in cash, specifically requesting bills with serial numbers beginning with the letter L from the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, making them easier to trace if ever recovered. Perhaps more puzzling than the money were Cooper's parachute requirements. 2 main parachutes and 2 reserve chutes. Why 4 parachutes? Investigators initially feared he might force a crew member to jump with him, but another theory later emerged. Cooper might have been smart enough to request extras to ensure authorities wouldn't sabotage his only escape option. Imagine being the FBI agent who had to make that call, says former bureau specialist Michael Thompson. If you provide defective parachutes and Cooper forces an innocent person to jump, you've essentially signed their death warrant. Cooper's request was brilliantly strategic. What Cooper didn't know was that one of the main chutes provided was actually a training model that had been sewn shut, completely non-functional, in a real jump. Whether this oversight revealed his inexperience or was simply bad luck remains debated to this day. While the negotiations continued, Cooper remained remarkably composed. He allowed all 36 passengers to disembark in Seattle, but insisted that the pilots, a flight engineer, and 1 flight attendant remain on board. As darkness fell, he outlined the next phase of his plan, a flight to Mexico City with a refueling stop in Reno. But it was his specific flight requirements that raised eyebrows among the pilots. Cooper demanded they fly at just 10,000 feet with the landing gear down, wing flaps set at 15 degrees, and the cabin left unpressurized. These were extremely unusual parameters for a commercial flight, but perfect conditions for someone planning to jump from the rear stairway of a Boeing 727. These weren't random demands, explains aviation expert Robert Bogash. They showed an understanding of the aircraft's capabilities and limitations. He needed a slow speed, low altitude, and access to the rear stairs. The question remains, where did he get this specialized knowledge? As the newly refueled plane taxied for takeoff into the rainy night sky shortly after 7:40 p.m., Cooper had his money, his parachutes, and his escape plan ready. But was he experienced enough to survive what would come next? The incredible mid-air disappearance that would baffle investigators for decades. The daring mid-air escape. As Flight 305 headed south through deteriorating weather conditions, Cooper made his final preparations in the rear of the aircraft. He had ordered the remaining crew members to stay in the cockpit with the door closed, giving him complete privacy for what came next. At approximately 8:13 p.m., something triggered a warning light in the cockpit. The aft stairway had been deployed. The Boeing 727 was unique among commercial aircraft in having a stairway that could be lowered during flight, a feature Cooper had seemingly researched in advance. When the pilot's voice came over the intercom, asking if everything was all right, Cooper's reply was simple and direct: no. It was the last word anyone would ever hear from him. What followed was an exit into darkness and chaos that defies imagination. Picture this: a man jumping from a commercial airliner into a pitch-black, stormy night. Temperatures hovering around 0 degrees Fahrenheit at altitude, wearing only a business suit and loafers. No specialized equipment, no visibility, no certainty of where he would land in the vast wilderness below. Could you imagine making that jump in the dark, in a storm, over mountainous terrain? Asks professional skydiver James Dismore. It's practically a suicide mission, even for someone with hundreds of jumps under their belt. For a novice, nearly impossible. The aircraft continued to Reno with the rear stairs still deployed, creating a dramatic scene when it landed. FBI agents swarmed the plane, but found it empty except for a few items Cooper left behind. 3 plastic drink stirrers, his mother-of-pearl tie clasp, and most significantly, his black JCPenney clip-on tie. That tie would later become one of the most examined pieces of evidence in FBI history, yielding microscopic clues decades after the hijacking. But on that November night in 1971, investigators faced a far more immediate question. Where was Cooper had he survived the jump, and if so, where would he have landed? Initial calculations placed Cooper's possible landing zone in a 28-mile stretch of difficult terrain in southwestern Washington. Over 50,000 acres of dense forest, steep ravines, and freezing rivers. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack, but much more difficult. The needle, after all, doesn't actively try to avoid being found. The massive manhunt that turned up everything but Cooper, and the shocking discovery 9 years later that reignited the investigation, the hunt, searching for a ghost in the wilderness. As dawn broke on November 25th, Thanksgiving Day, hundreds of military personnel, FBI agents, and local law enforcement began combing the rugged landscape of southwestern Washington. The search area was daunting. Thick Douglas fir forests, steep canyons, snow-covered mountainsides, and countless waterways where evidence could be swept away forever. Conditions could hardly have been worse for tracking. Heavy rain had fallen throughout the night, potentially washing away footprints or disturbing landing evidence. The FBI employed helicopters with infrared sensors, experienced trackers with search dogs, and even had soldiers from Fort Lewis walking arm in arm through sections of forest looking for any sign of Cooper or his parachute. Imagine trying to find a single man who doesn't want to be found in an area that size, explains retired FBI agent Ralph Himmelsbach, who worked the case for 8 years. It would be challenging enough if he'd landed in an open field on a clear day, but at night, in a forest, during a storm, the odds were stacked heavily in Cooper's favor. The search revealed nothing. No parachute, no money, no body, not even a footprint that could be definitively tied to Cooper. This absence of evidence spawned 2 competing theories that persist to this day. Either Cooper survived and expertly covered his tracks, or the jump killed him, and his remains simply haven't been discovered in the vast, unforgiving terrain. Some search team members reported finding unusual markings or disturbed ground, but nothing conclusive emerged. Local residents called in hundreds of tips about strange noises or unfamiliar people in the area, but each lead evaporated under scrutiny. As days stretched into weeks and weeks into months, the likelihood of finding fresh evidence diminished. Was it possible Cooper had an accomplice waiting with a vehicle? Could he have landed miles from the projected drop zone due to high winds or navigational miscalculations? Or was his body lying in some remote gully, never to be found? The FBI continued to operate on multiple fronts, interviewing witnesses, analyzing evidence from the plane, and tracking the serial numbers of the ransom money through financial institutions nationwide. But Cooper himself seemed to have completely vanished. What would you do if you suddenly came into possession of $200,000 in marked bill? Asks former prosecutor Barbara McQuaid. You couldn't deposit them or spend large amounts without raising suspicion. Did Cooper have a plan for that? Did he even survive to face that problem? The unexpected discovery that shocked investigators nearly a decade later, and the bizarre clues hidden in Cooper's abandoned necktie. The money trail, a riverbank discovery changes everything. For 9 years, the trail remained cold. Despite one of the most extensive manhunts in FBI history, not a single ransom bill had surfaced in circulation. This fact strengthened the theory that Cooper had perished during his jump, with the money lost forever in the wilderness. Then came February 10th, 1980, the day that turned the case upside down. 8-year-old Brian Ingram was vacationing with his family along the Columbia River near Vancouver, Washington. While digging a fire pit on Tenor Bar, a sandy stretch of riverbank, he uncovered 3 packages of cash. The deteriorating bundles contained 294 $20 bills, all with serial numbers matching the Cooper ransom money. The discovery hit the investigation like a lightning bolt, recalls Larry Carr, the FBI agent later assigned to the case. Finding that money raised more questions than answers. How did it get there? When was it buried? And why only that amount, $5,800 out of the $200,000? The money's location defied easy explanation. It was found 20 miles downstream from Cooper's suspected drop zone. Yet the bills were neatly bundled together rather than scattered, as would be expected if they'd been carried by river currents. More puzzling still, the area where Ingram found the money had been underwater during high river levels in 1974, suggesting the cash was deposited sometime after that date, years after the hijacking. Forensic examination of the bills revealed another anomaly. Despite exposure to the elements, the cash showed less deterioration than expected after 9 years. Did someone, perhaps Cooper himself, bury the money there years after the hijacking? Or was this evidence that Cooper had landed near the river, lost some cash during his escape, and the money had somehow remained bundled together despite years of river flooding? Some investigators proposed that the money had traveled downstream naturally during flood conditions, eventually becoming embedded in the sandy bank. Others believed Cooper might have hidden it there as a cash stash for later retrieval. A third theory suggested Cooper didn't survive, and these bills simply separated from his body as it decomposed somewhere upriver. Whatever the explanation, the money find reignited public fascination with the case. Yet despite renewed attention and advanced forensic testing of the bills and their wrappings, the FBI couldn't determine conclusively how they ended up on Tenor Bar. What makes this case so compelling is that each piece of evidence seems to contradict another, says criminal investigator Jennifer Dumas. The found money suggests Cooper survived, but if he did, why didn't more bills surface in circulation? Why risk burying evidence rather than spending it? The mysterious particles found on Cooper's tie that might reveal his true identity, and the strange pattern of suspects who've emerged over 5 decades. Microscopic clues to Cooper's identity. Among the few items Cooper left behind on the plane, his black clip-on necktie would prove the most revealing. While initially considered just another personal effect, advances in forensic technology decades later transformed this simple accessory into a potential key to Cooper's identity. In 2007, FBI agent Larry Carr reopened certain aspects of the Cooper investigation and arranged for the tie to undergo electron microscope analysis. What scientists discovered was remarkable. More than 100,000 microscopic particles, including pure titanium, aluminum oxide, bismuth, and rare earth elements like cerium and strontium. This unusual combination pointed to someone who worked in a very specific environment. These particles tell us Cooper likely worked in a manufacturing environment dealing with metals, explains metallurgist Dr. Thomas Cartels. The presence of titanium is particularly interesting because in 1971, it was primarily used in aerospace manufacturing. Boeing, for example, was using it extensively in their aircraft production. The particle analysis fits with Cooper's apparent knowledge of aircraft, particularly the Boeing 727's unique rear staircase system. Did he gain this specialized knowledge because he worked in the industry? Was he perhaps an engineer, machinist, or chemical processor at Boeing, or another aerospace firm? The tie particles strongly suggest someone with access to an industrial environment where these rare metals were used or processed. Additional clues came from the tie itself. Being a clip-on rather than a traditional tie might indicate someone who worked around machinery, where a standard tie could be dangerous if caught in equipment. The J.C. Penney brand suggested a middle-class background rather than someone of significant wealth or poverty. What would your tie reveal about your daily life? Asks forensic specialist Martha Corwin. Your clothing carries microscopic traces of every environment you spend time in. Your home, workplace, hobbies. Cooper's tie essentially preserved his occupational DNA. The forensic analysis painted a picture of someone who was likely not a professional criminal, but rather an ordinary man with specialized knowledge, perhaps a disgruntled employee with inside information about aircraft and airport procedures. The tie evidence aligned with behavioral analyses, suggesting Cooper was methodical, knowledgeable, and detail-oriented. Yet despite this forensic breakthrough, investigators still couldn't match these occupational markers to a specific suspect. The tie provided a profile, but not a name, and without DNA evidence to compare against potential suspects, this tantalizing clue remains just that, a clue without a conclusion. The parade of suspects who've been named as the possible D.B. Cooper, and why each theory ultimately falls short. Suspect theories. Could any of these men be Cooper? Over 5 decades, dozens of individuals have been suspected of being D.B. Cooper. Some were nominated by FBI investigators, others by journalists or amateur sleuths, and some even by family members making deathbed claims. Each theory contains compelling elements, yet none has provided irrefutable proof. Richard Floyd McCoy emerges as an early favorite. Just months after the Cooper hijacking, McCoy executed a remarkably similar skyjacking, parachuting from a United Airlines flight with $500,000 in ransom. He was captured days later at his home in Utah. As a Vietnam veteran with parachute training and a resemblance to Cooper's description, McCoy seemed like the perfect suspect. However, FBI agents ultimately ruled him out, noting physical discrepancies with witness descriptions and the fact that McCoy was reportedly in Las Vegas on the day of Cooper's hijacking. If you were planning a skyjacking, wouldn't you study previous successful attempts? Asks criminal profiler Pat Brown. McCoy's similar method doesn't necessarily mean he was Cooper. It might mean he studied Cooper's case and improved upon it. Dwayne Weber represents one of the most intriguing possibilities. In 1995, his widow came forward claiming that before his death, Weber had confessed to being D.B. Cooper. She reported that he had nightmares about jumping from planes and once mumbled, "I left my fingerprints on the plane." Weber allegedly took her to Tina Bar years before the money was discovered there. Despite these compelling coincidences, FBI fingerprint analysis eventually eliminated Weber as a suspect. Robert Rackstraw, a Vietnam-era paratrooper with explosives training and a remarkable resemblance to the Cooper sketches, became a leading suspect in the 2000s. He had the requisite skills, a criminal history, and was even investigated by the FBI in the late 1970s. Private investigators claimed to have found encrypted messages in letters allegedly sent by Cooper that pointed to Rackstraw's military service numbers. Rackstraw himself played coy about the allegations until his death in 2019, neither confirming nor explicitly denying them. Other notable suspects include Kenneth Christensen, a former Northwest Airlines purser with parachute training who reportedly made suspicious cash purchases after the hijacking; William Gossett, who allegedly confessed to his sons and possessed a key matching the handcuff keys used by Northwest Orient Airlines; Barbara Dayton, a transgender woman who claimed to have committed the hijacking disguised as a man before later recanting her confession. The problem with the Cooper case isn't a shortage of suspects. It's that no single suspect checks all the boxes, explains FBI historian John Douglas. We have people with the right skills but wrong physical descriptions, people in the right place but without parachute experience, and people with suspicious behavior but solid alibis. How modern forensic techniques are bringing us closer than ever to solving this enduring mystery. Cold case breakthrough, modern science tackles the mystery. While the FBI officially suspended active investigation of the Cooper case in 2016, advances in forensic science continue to offer new pathways towards solving this half-century mystery. Modern DNA analysis, computer modeling, and chemical testing methods unavailable in the 1970s have breathed new life into the aging evidence. In recent years, private researchers have extracted DNA samples from the clip-on tie Cooper left behind. Although partial and degraded, these samples could potentially be compared against suspects or their descendants using genetic genealogy, the same technique that recently identified the Golden State Killer after more than 40 years. The challenge remains finding a confirmed sample of Cooper's DNA to establish a baseline comparison. The tie is essentially covered in Cooper's skin cells and sweat residue, explains forensic scientist Dr. Angela Reynolds. While we couldn't get a complete profile due to degradation, even partial DNA could eliminate suspects or potentially identify family connections through ancestry databases. Modern computer modeling has also revolutionized understanding of Cooper's possible jump zone. Using advanced weather data analysis, aircraft performance metrics, and parachute drift calculations, scientists have created more precise maps of where Cooper likely landed. Some models suggest he may have come down significantly east of the original search area, potentially explaining why no trace was found despite extensive searching. If you were jumping from a plane into darkness, could you accurately gauge your position? Asks skydiving expert Michael Coleman. Even experienced jumpers would struggle to hit a target zone under those conditions. Cooper could have been miles from where investigators were searching. Chemical analysis of the rubber bands holding together the money found at Tina Bar revealed another fascinating clue. The bands had not significantly degraded despite years of presumed exposure, suggesting they weren't in the water for the entire period between 1971 and 1980. This finding contradicts theories that the money floated downstream immediately after the hijacking. Perhaps most intriguing are emerging theories about Cooper's actual jump time and location. By reconstructing the flight path using original navigation records and pilot interviews, some investigators now believe Cooper may have jumped earlier than initially thought, potentially placing him in a completely different area than where the FBI concentrated their search efforts. The case has also attracted citizen scientists who apply modern technology to historical data. Online communities dedicated to the Cooper mystery use sophisticated tools to analyze everything from wind patterns to soil composition in potential landing zones. These collaborative efforts have generated new leads currently being explored by private investigators. The profound cultural impact of the Cooper legend and why this case continues to captivate our imagination 50 years later. Cooper's enduring cultural impact. Few crimes in American history have captured the public imagination like the D.B. Cooper hijacking. What explains our continuing fascination with this particular criminal case 50 years later? The answer lies in a perfect storm of mystery, daring, and cultural timing that transformed a hijacker into a folk hero. Cooper emerged at a pivotal moment in American history when public trust in institutions was eroding due to Vietnam and Watergate. His audacious, non-violent crime against a corporate entity struck a chord with a population increasingly skeptical of authority. Unlike most criminals, Cooper harmed no one physically. He was polite, even gentlemanly by witness accounts, and then, most importantly, he vanished completely. Cooper represented something uniquely American, explains cultural historian Rebecca Johnson. He was the lone individual who beat the system through intelligence rather than violence. Whether he survived or not almost doesn't matter. The legend of the man who outsmarted the FBI, the airlines, and conventional wisdom was established the moment he jumped. This cultural resonance has spawned countless references across popular media. Cooper appears in everything from television shows like Prison Break and Breaking Bad to songs by Kid Rock and Chuck Berry. Annual D.B. Cooper Days celebrations in Washington state attract thousands of enthusiasts. Books, documentaries, and podcasts analyzing the case continue to multiply each year. The Cooper case has also had lasting practical impacts. The Cooper vane, a device preventing the deployment of a Boeing 727's rear stairs during flight, became standard equipment after the hijacking. More broadly, the entire incident accelerated the implementation of modern airport security measures, including passenger screening and metal detectors that are now universal. Perhaps most significantly, Cooper created a mystery that seems deliberately constructed to remain unsolved. Even if he perished in the jump, as many FBI agents believe, he did so in a way that left no trace. If he survived, he showed remarkable discipline in never spending the marked bills or revealing his identity. Either scenario feels like the final act of a master showman who understood that legends grow in the absence of conclusions. Would this case fascinate us if it had been solved immediately? Asks true crime author Michelle McNamara. Probably not. It's the unanswered questions that keep us coming back. The possibility that someone pulled off the impossible and walked away forever. Today, as aging investigators retire and witnesses pass away, solving the Cooper mystery becomes increasingly unlikely. Yet interest only seems to grow with time. Something about this ordinary-looking man who performed an extraordinary feat, whether suicidal or brilliant, continues to resonate with our desire for answers and our secret admiration for those who defy the odds. The question that began this mystery remains unanswered. Who was D.B. Cooper? But perhaps the more important question is, who have we made him into? And what does our fascination with his story reveal about ourselves? Thanks for watching another episode. While you are still here, make sure to click the video on your screen for more quality content.